I still remember the morning like it happened yesterday, even though 19 years have passed, because some moments don't fade, no matter how much time tries to bury them. It was a cold April morning in Ohio, the kind where the sky looks too heavy to rise properly, and I was sitting in my old car outside Riverside Community Hospital, holding my stomach, praying silently that life would not break me completely that day. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel and comment where you're watching from. I'd like to hear from you. My name is Grace Williams, and I was 23 when I became a mother alone. No husband, no family support, no money, just me and a child growing inside me from a love story that ended before it even had a chance to begin. His father's name was Daniel Carter, a man I thought I would marry. A man who told me he loved me enough to build forever. But I didn't know then that forever was something people like him only said when they were about to leave. I met Daniel when I was working part-time as a waitress while finishing nursing school. He came into the diner one rainy evening wearing a navy suit that looked too expensive for the cracked booths and sticky floors of that place. I remember thinking he looked lost, like someone who didn't belong in a world where people counted their tips just to survive the week. He ordered coffee he never drank. And when I asked him if everything was okay, he looked at me like I was the first person who had ever asked him that without expecting something in return. That was the beginning of everything. Or maybe the beginning of my downfall. Because Daniel Carter wasn't just any man. He was the son of Robert Carter, a billionaire real estate developer in New York, a man whose name appeared on glass towers and charity foundations and magazine covers I used to glance at while cleaning hotel rooms during college breaks. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that Daniel came back the next day. And the day after that. And soon he started waiting for my shift to end so he could walk me home, even though my apartment was only 7 blocks away, and he lived in a completely different world. I should have seen it then. People like him don't walk into your life by accident. They step into it like they already own it. And maybe that's why I trusted him, because he made me feel chosen. 3 months later, I was in love with him. 6 months later, I was pregnant. And 9 months later, I was alone. I still remember the last day I saw him clearly. It was a Sunday morning. The sun was bright, too bright for what was about to happen. I was standing in my tiny apartment holding a positive pregnancy test in my hand, my heart beating so fast I thought it might crack my ribs. When I told him, he didn't speak at first. He just stared at me, not at the test, at me, like I had become a problem he didn't plan for. Then he said something I will never forget. "Grace, this can't happen." And I laughed because I thought he was joking. But he wasn't. He told me his father would destroy him if he found out he got a waitress pregnant. He told me there were expectations, responsibilities, a future already written for him that didn't include me. I remember standing there holding my stomach, asking him if our child meant anything to him at all. And that was when he broke my heart completely. He said, "I can't be part of this. Not I won't. Not I'm scared. Just I can't." Like my life, and the life growing inside me, was a math problem he couldn't solve. He left that morning without looking back. And I never saw him again. Or so I thought. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. I moved into a cheaper apartment when I could no longer afford rent. Then into a shared room. Then into a place so small I could hear my neighbors arguing through the walls at night. I worked 2 jobs while pregnant, morning shifts at a diner and night shifts cleaning office buildings downtown. Some nights I would fall asleep on bathroom floors during breaks because my body simply gave up on pretending I was okay. But every time I felt like quitting, I would place my hand on my stomach and remind myself I was no longer just Grace Williams. I was someone's entire world. My son was born on a stormy night in August. I named him Ethan Williams. No middle name from his father. No legacy from a man who walked away. Just mine. The moment I held him, I understood something I had never understood before. Love isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's sacrifice. Sometimes it's looking at your broken life and deciding that someone else deserves more than your suffering. The hospital offered me help forms. The nurses asked me if I had family. I lied and said yes, because admitting I was alone made everything feel even heavier. I brought Ethan home to a tiny one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a heater that only worked when it wanted to. I remember laying him down in a laundry basket because I couldn't afford a crib yet, and sitting beside him crying quietly so he wouldn't hear me. Those were the nights I made a promise to myself. No matter what it took, no matter how long it took, my son would never feel abandoned the way I was. Years passed, slowly at first, then all at once. Ethan grew into a quiet, intelligent child with eyes I sometimes looked into and felt something I couldn't explain. He was gentle, observant, always asking questions about things other kids ignored. Why do some kids have dads and I don't? That question came when he was 7. I remember sitting him down at the kitchen table, holding his small hands in mine, and telling him the truth I had prepared for years. That man made a choice, Ethan. But it wasn't your fault. And it was never about you. He didn't cry. He just nodded like he was storing the pain somewhere deep inside where even I couldn't reach it. That was the day I realized something terrifying. Children don't always break loudly. Sometimes they break quietly. And you only notice when it's too late. But Ethan didn't become bitter. He became determined. He studied harder than anyone in his class. He won science competitions. He fixed broken things in the apartment when I couldn't afford repairs. And when I worked late shifts, he would wait up and make sure I got home safely. At 14, he told me something that shocked me. "Mom, I'm going to build something big one day, so you never have to struggle again." I laughed softly and told him he didn't need to save me. But he shook his head and said, "I already started." I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. If I had known what was coming, I think I would have been more afraid. Because 19 years after I held him for the first time in a hospital room, I was about to sit in a graduation hall and watch my son become a man. And I had no idea that the past I had buried so carefully was about to walk back into our lives wearing a $10,000 suit. Please click that subscribe button if you haven't done so. The morning of Ethan's graduation, I woke up before my alarm, even though I hadn't slept properly the night before. It was one of those nights where your mind refuses to cooperate, where every memory from the past 19 years starts replaying itself like it's trying to prepare you for something you don't yet understand. I stood in front of the mirror that morning for a long time, not because I was trying to look beautiful, but because I was trying to recognize the woman I had become. Grace Williams at 23 was tired but hopeful. Grace Williams at 42 was something else entirely. Stronger, yes, but also marked by years that had taken things from her she never got back. Still, today wasn't about me. Today was Ethan's day. My son was graduating from Lakewood High School in Ohio, and I kept telling myself that whatever pain I carried had no place in that moment. I dressed in my best simple navy blue dress, the same one I had worn to interviews, parent-teacher meetings, and every important milestone I could afford to show up for. I brushed my hair carefully, not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I wanted Ethan to look at me and feel proud. That was always my goal, to make sure he never felt like I was something to be ashamed of. When I stepped into the school auditorium later that morning, the atmosphere hit me immediately. It was loud, warm, alive with celebration. Parents filled the seats, cameras were already out, and students in graduation gowns were laughing nervously as they tried to pretend this wasn't one of the biggest days of their lives. I sat in the third row. Ethan had insisted I come early so I could get a good seat. "I want you to see everything, Mom," he had said the night before. "Don't miss a second." So I didn't. I sat there watching other parents arrive, noticing how some families came in groups, grandparents, fathers, mothers, siblings, all together like a picture of something I had never been part of. And for a brief moment, I felt it, that familiar quiet ache. Not jealousy, just awareness, that my son and I had built our entire world with only two people inside it. But then I saw Ethan, and everything else faded. He walked across the stage with that same calm focus he had always had since childhood. Tall now, confident, wearing his gown like he belonged exactly where he was. When he looked toward the crowd, his eyes found me almost instantly, and he smiled. That small smile was enough to undo every difficult year of my life. Because in that moment, I knew I had done something right. I had kept him alive. I had kept him whole. After the ceremony began, I listened to speeches I barely processed, my attention drifting between the stage and Ethan, who sat 2 rows ahead of me with his classmates. And that's when I noticed something strange. A shift in the room. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. But it was there. People started turning their heads toward the back entrance. At first, I thought it was just another late parent arriving. But then I saw it. Security personnel. 2 men in dark suits entering the auditorium quietly, scanning the room like they were searching for someone important. I frowned slightly, because Lakewood High never had security like that. Then the whispers started. Low. Controlled. Confused. "Is that a camera crew?" "No, that looks like private security. Why are they here?" I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself it had nothing to do with us. Graduation days were chaotic. Maybe some local news station was covering the event. But then the principal stepped onto the stage and adjusted the microphone with a nervous smile that didn't feel rehearsed, and said something that changed the energy in the entire room. "Before we continue," he said, clearing his throat, "we have a special guest joining us today." I remember thinking that was odd. No one had mentioned a guest speaker. The principal continued. "A donor who has contributed significantly to education programs in this district has asked to observe today's ceremony." Donor. That word should have meant nothing to me. But it didn't. Because the moment he said it, the security presence at the back of the hall shifted again. That quiet change in atmosphere. Like the room itself had started holding its breath. Then the doors opened fully, and a man walked in. At first, I only saw his silhouette against the hallway light. Tall. Controlled. Dressed in a dark tailored suit that didn't belong in a high school auditorium. He moved with the kind of confidence that didn't ask for space. It assumed it already owned it. And then he stepped into the light. And I stopped breathing. Because I knew that face. Even though I hadn't seen it in 19 years. Even though time had carved maturity into his features, softened some edges and sharpened others. I would have recognized him anywhere. Daniel Carter. Ethan's father. My past. Walking into my son's graduation like the years between us had never happened. For a moment, I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't even process what I was seeing. My hands went cold instantly. My mind tried to reject the image, like it was protecting me from something too large to accept at once. 19 years. 19 years of silence. 19 years of raising a child alone. And now he was here, in the same room as the son he abandoned. I watched as he slowly scanned the auditorium, not in confusion, but in control, like he already knew exactly where he was supposed to look. And then it happened. His eyes found Ethan, and something in his expression changed. Not shock, not confusion. Something deeper, something heavier, like recognition that came with consequences. Ethan didn't notice at first. He was still talking quietly with a classmate, completely unaware that the entire energy of the room had shifted around him. But I noticed, because I had spent 19 years watching my son grow into a man who had Daniel Carter's eyes. And in that moment, everything inside me tightened, because I realized this wasn't random. He didn't just show up. He came here for a reason, and whatever that reason was, it was about to destroy the life I had carefully built to protect my son from the truth.